everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today for one of our AT&T focused webinars. I'm Sam, and I'll be your moderator throughout this presentation. In just a second, we're going to be joined by Tyson Mavar. Tyson is going to cover a hefty topic today: how to retire from AT&T with $1 million saved for retirement. I'm sure you're all interested in how you can do that. And after his presentation, he will be answering some of the more common questions we receive surrounding this topic. If you have any questions while he's speaking, I encourage you to pop open your Q&A box. You can ask away there. It's completely anonymous, and he will try to answer as many as he can, time permitted. If he doesn't have time to answer them, I will make sure that they are addressed by one of our AT&T focused advisors after the presentation. Throughout the presentation, I will be entering some links in the chat box, so pop that open too if you're interested. There will be some complimentary links, one for our AT&T focused retirement guide, another to book an appointment with either Tyson Mavar himself or one of his colleagues if you wish, and some other really great resources that you should take advantage of. Before he comes on, I'd like to just very quickly remind you we are not affiliated nor endorsed whatsoever by AT&T. We are a completely independent group of financial advisors here. Please keep that in mind as you're listening along. And with all of that, let's get started with Tyson Mavar.
Thanks, Sam, and thank you everyone for attending our webinar series today. My name is Tyson Mavar. I'm one of the AT&T focused advisors for the retirement group. And on today's webinar series, we're going to talk about what we found to be some fairly important considerations for somebody approaching their retirement from AT&T, both from a financial perspective as well as a financial perspective. As many of you know, we have worked with clients from AT&T going back over 30 years, and we've seen a lot of mistakes made, but we've also seen a lot of success stories. So we're going to talk to you about some of the things we find to be pretty important as somebody approaches retirement. Interestingly enough, Americans aged 55 through 59, 90% of them are still working. And in fact, this number has gone up in recent years because of a movement that is being called the FIRE movement, Financial Independence Retire Early movement. We've seen more and more people aiming at an early retirement. And it might not be necessarily a full retirement, but leaving the company that they worked for several decades in an effort to go do something else, whether it's inside or outside of the workforce. Now, it's really, really important, though, if you plan this, that you've put the plan together, that you have enough money, because there's a lot of costs of retiring early. The biggest one being there's more years to finance in retirement, given that your life expectancy from retirement to death is longer now, but there's many others. Social Security might not be as much. Your pension's probably not going to be as much. Your 401k is probably not going to be as much. There could be some tax implications of retiring early that we would want to be aware of and try to navigate around. So it takes additional planning if you're somebody who's looking to retire earlier than the average individual. It doesn't just come down to financial planning. It also comes down to meeting your personal goals and also envisioning what retirement's going to look like. Far too often we find people that leave AT&T, whether by choice or by force, that just were not ready psychologically to do so. And you go from this full schedule to no schedule, hard stop into retirement. It can be very psychologically taxing. It could put you into a situation of feeling empty inside, or you don't have the same identity that you enjoyed while you were working because you haven't replicated or replaced that schedule with a better schedule, ideally. And so that advanced planning can help you to develop a philosophy about your retirement, what's important to you and maybe you and your spouse for your retirement, so that that transition becomes a little smoother and you hit the ground running after you leave AT&T. Now, from a financial perspective, it's really, really important to go through an exercise we call a cash flow analysis, wherein we will look at the income sources you expect for retirement, typically pension, 401k, Social Security, maybe some future work for you and or your spouse. Maybe you are charging rent to your children who are still living at home. There could be a variety of options for generating income in retirement. Maybe it's a fun job like marshal at the golf course, or telling people where the garden section at Lowe's is. But we want to start thinking about that ahead of time and build it into the plan. In this plan, we call it retirement cash flow analysis. So we look at not only the sources of income for retirement, but also the expenses. And this is where the biggest mistakes, in my experience, people make are underestimating their expenses and not putting enough time into not only what you're spending today, but how are those expenses going to change once you get to retirement. Healthcare is one that often is overlooked in terms of the increases to expenses for somebody who has never been retired before and is not certain not only how those expenses change, but what subsidies are available to you, whether it's from AT&T, from the government through Medicare and Medicaid, or maybe it's through the state exchange in an effort to bridge your retirement healthcare insurance from retirement to the point where you turn 65 and qualify for Medicare. We encourage everybody to go through a budget exercise, which we have spreadsheets that can help you with this. The best way to do this, in my opinion, there's a couple ways to do this. One, the easiest and quickest way is to look at what your take-home pay is today. If you're saving some of that in your savings and checking account, we would want to subtract that because you're not spending that money. But a lot of people I talk to are spending 100% of that take-home pay after they've deducted for taxes, 401k contributions, and your healthcare premiums, and any other deductions you might have, life insurance potentially. That take-home pay, if you're spending 100% of it, chances are you might need that same amount or close to that amount after you retire. So that's a good starting point, but it's more helpful if you go through a breakdown of where all that money's going. And that's not only going to help you prepare for your retirement, but it's going to help you to cut out some of those unnecessary expenses like eating out, those subscriptions that you might not even know that you had, right? Identifying things that aren't creating a whole lot of value in your life that you can easily cut out and make a big dent on the sustainability of your retirement plan. Now, one thing I also recommend people do when we're going through this budget exercise is put it to the test. See if, let's say your take-home pay is $10,000 a month now, and you anticipate your retirement expenses to be $8,000 a month. Well, go a few months and see if you can save that $2,000 a month that your budget exercise expected you to be able to save, and see if you can actually live off that $8,000 a month in this scenario. And if you can, you might be ready to retire. If not, you may have to go back to the drawing board, maybe work a little bit longer, or maybe you can afford to spend the same $10,000 a month, maybe even more in the early years of retirement, which is another important thing to start to evaluate is how are my expenses going to change at retirement? Are we going to have some kids falling off payroll in retirement, or some expenses associated with children or family members going away, or at least reducing after you retire? Maybe your intention is to spend more money in the earlier, the go-go years of retirement, which is completely normal as long as we built a plan for this and continue to monitor that plan into retirement. In other words, starting to cut back on spending as we get older and maybe lose the energy to do as much traveling and other things that we had energy to do early in retirement. We also want to start to look at the things that we value in life, things that we like doing more than going to work. Hopefully you like at least a little bit going to work, but what does that next phase look like for you? What are some hobbies that you enjoy today? What are some things you might be intrigued in spending more time on? Maybe getting a gym membership, maybe taking a golf lesson, building a garden in your backyard, maybe doing a little bit of traveling in advance of your retirement to see if these are even things that you like doing. And you might find out you don't like any of these things and you just like your job, and you might as well just keep doing what you like doing and get paid to do it. Usually that's not the case, and hopefully there are some things you like doing, maybe volunteering at your church or helping out at your grandkids' school. There's 1,001 things that you could do other than your job, but we don't oftentimes have a lot of time during our busy careers to explore those things. But prior to retirement is the time to start checking some things off the list that you don't care to do and finding those things that you're passionate about so you're really ready to do those things. And then making sure that those goals are aligned with your retirement time frame. So figuring out the optimal time, not from just a financial perspective, but from a personal perspective that lines up with your retirement. So, maybe your first grandchild was born. That's not a bad time to have a little bit more time on your hands to go help out and really spend some. Maybe there's some other big milestones coming up associated with friends, family, with different hobbies that you have. It's really, really important to have your retirement line up, the timing of your retirement, line up with all the things in your life. Health concerns we found is a big one too. People selecting a retirement date different from what they expected because of health concerns, either with themselves or with their family. So really trying to spend less time focusing so much on work and more time planning for the longest vacation of your life, which we call retirement. Unfortunately, what we found is that 74% of Americans over the age of 50 don't even have a written plan for their retirement. And this is what has people making poor decisions with the timing of their retirement. I have a client in Texas who, when he was getting ready to retire, we started talking that first year, and he was in a unique opportunity where interest rates had gotten really low and his lump sum was very high as a result, but they were going up, and he would be losing $50,000 to $60,000, something like that, on his pension if he didn't retire by a certain date, and it was within a month. And so my obligation to him was to get him to think about what that next phase looked like to reduce the stress of making a big lifetime decision. And so I asked him, if he wasn't working next month, what did he see himself doing? And he started thinking about it. And in his case, he figured he would leave Texas, go to Colorado. Him and his wife had been thinking about getting a RV and going back to somewhere that they spent some of their career, working in Colorado. And so I asked him what kind of RV, and he really hadn't put a whole lot of thought into it, but through this exercise, he's really started thinking about the details, the granular details about his retirement. And so as it turned out, he ended up retiring. We look back still to this day, he's very happy about retiring when he did, because he ended up retiring with more money on his pension because of the interest rate opportunity. A year later, I went to his house. We had lunch together. He showed me his RV, a really nice toy hauler. And a couple years later, they ended up building a cabin in Colorado that they go to in the summers to escape the Texas heat. And their kids and grandkids sometimes join them out there. So beautiful success story, but it only happens when you start to really envision what retirement's going to look like for you. And far too often we find people don't do that from a financial perspective or from a psychological perspective, but it's a very important exercise to go through. We encourage you to spend some time with us if you're interested. It doesn't cost anything to have us put together this cash flow analysis I mentioned. We'll tell you our story, and you can verify for yourself whether or not you think it's a good fit to do some business with us, if you even choose to work with an advisory firm in retirement. We'll talk to you about what we think our clients like about working with us and our experience working with AT&T employees in the past. And if you'd like to even just ask a few questions, you can email us at info@theretirementgroup.com. You can call us at 800-900-5867. You can also take a picture of this QR code if you have a smartphone to get on mine or one of my colleagues' calendars who understands the AT&T benefits plans. And if you're just not ready to talk to us yet, but want to get more information, our LinkedIn page is where we publish a lot of these webinars that we do, going over a myriad of different topics, some specific to the AT&T retirement process, and some generic to estate planning, tax planning, investment planning, and a variety of other topics that we found important to somebody approaching their retirement from AT&T. We do have a bit of time for some questions that came up this week, so I'll go through a couple of them. The first question is, what should I consider when deciding between rolling over my AT&T 401k into an IRA or leaving it in the company plan? Very good question, important decision. It's not obvious for everybody. Let me get rid of this disclosure here. What we found is that there's some tax benefits to leaving your 401k in the company plan, and usually they have to do with retiring before 59 and a half, or leaving AT&T at least before 59 and a half. You can take penalty-free withdrawals from that account as long as you left the company on or after the year you turned 55. There could be some good tax benefits to leaving the money in there. The main reason I see people rolling over their 401k is because of the limitations on investment options within that plan. So in an IRA, you're not limited to what you can invest in, or at least there's very few limitations on what you can invest in. So meeting your objectives from a risk tolerance perspective as well as a values perspective, oftentimes you could do a better job of that with more options. Some advisory firms cannot advise you on your 401k, so a lot of people will roll their money over in an effort to start that relationship. Fortunately, our company can literally manage your 401k for you if you're just not ready to move the money from that account. but oftentimes we would prefer to have more options available. You also want to be aware of the costs associated with rolling money over, hopefully not on an upfront basis, but at least on an ongoing basis that you can incur, and see if the value is there to meet the compensation of whoever is helping you with managing that account. How can I optimize my 401k investments to ensure I reach my $1 million retirement goal? Well, first of all, I would discourage anybody from having an arbitrary goal of a number like $1 million. I hear that a lot as a common goal, although these days $1 million doesn't get you nearly what it did even 5 years ago. So you may want to also revisit that number on an ongoing basis when we see inflation. But let's just say we did our due diligence, ran the cash flow analysis. $1 million is that perfect number that we find on a conservative basis to be sustainable for you to have a low probability of running out of money in retirement. Well, in approaching retirement, we would first want to identify where are some ways that you can maybe get more bang for your buck on your 401k funds. Maybe there's some tax strategies that you might want to consider, such as Roth conversion, maybe an after-tax to Roth rollover. Oftentimes I'll review a client or even a non-client's 401k plan, find out they have after-tax money built up in their 401k. Well, after-tax money in a 401k unfortunately grows taxable. The earnings on that money is taxable at some point in the future when you withdraw the funds. Whereas earnings on a Roth IRA, for example, are tax-free as long as some criteria are met. So in many cases, there is a very high probability you would benefit for yourself from a tax perspective to get after-tax money out of your 401k and into the Roth environment. At AT&T, oftentimes they'll have a in-service rollover available for you, and if you're not sure where to find that, call us and we can help you identify if that's even available. And that could be helpful not just from a tax perspective, but from an investment perspective. You'll have access to a broader menu of investments in an IRA than you did in your 401k. And if there's any possibility you may work with an advisor firm in retirement, probably not a bad idea to develop a relationship prior to retirement to see if it's a good fit, maybe with a smaller amount of money than waiting till the day you retire, compounding on all these other decisions you have to make, and handing over your life savings. Might not be a bad idea to do a test run prior to some of those bigger decisions. If it turned out to be a good fit, it's going to probably be a less stressful time when you retire because you have that track record built already. And if it wasn't a good fit, you're probably not going to be disappointed about it either because you figured it out before retirement with a smaller amount of money. You can check that company off your list of potential suitors for a retirement advisor when you get there. So those were all the questions that we had today. Thank you everybody for spending some time with us this afternoon. Everybody have a good, safe rest of your week, and we hope to talk to you all very soon.